What is going on, you guys? My name is Yarrii, and you're watching Yarrii's Take the Podcast, where I keep everything raw, uncut, and educational. In this podcast, I hope to reach out to people who are ready to wake up and heal from generational trauma. Stick around to learn something new with each and every episode and see the world through my take. Now, with March being Women's History Month, I just wanted to take time to dedicate this episode for the women who have made their mark in history and inspired the rest of us. Also joining me today is a woman making history herself, the first Muslim state representative, Madinah Wilson Anton. Thank you for coming to my show.
Thanks for having me. My name is Madinah Wilson Anton. I was first elected in 2020 to represent the 26th district, which is in the Newark Bay Area, about 45 minutes north of DSU. And I'm one of 6 girls, number 2. So a lot of takes happening in our household growing up.
MashaAllah.
And the area that I represent is very representative of the state in our country. It's diverse ethnically, economically. It's a suburban area, but it's majority minority. It's where I grew up. And I'm really just honored to represent our district down here in Dover.
We're honored to have you here. Before I get into the episode, I want to ask you, it is Ramadan. How's Ramadan going for you? How has it been? How's fasting going?
Girl, it's going.
I know.
So I was chatting with you earlier. This is my first day fasting. So I had been fasting kind of going into Ramadan because I had days to make up.
Yeah, me too.
All my sisters out there, you know what I'm talking about.
Last day.
Stay last, right?
Procrastinating, I know.
So I was catching up. So I'm okay. But what's different is being a legislator and fasting. I do a lot of talking. I do a lot of meetings. My mouth gets dry.
I know. I always hated that working in customer service. Like back then, like constantly talking to customers. I'm just like, bro, like I'm trying to use as little words necessary, and you want to have a whole conversation with me. But that's mashallah. That's great. Like alhamdulillah. I hope you get the full blessings of Ramadan this year.
Thank you, and you as well.
Thank you, inshallah. We've been doing great. Like me personally, I've been having a great Ramadan. I just want to continue having a better one. Moving forward, I know, I want to jump right into the topic. I personally, when I first met you, it was at the holiday for the kids at the Turkish mosque.
Yes.
I was really excited. I had to make sure I introduced myself right away. I was like, I definitely want to make a connection. I definitely want to reach out. Because I remember seeing your face on social media a long time ago where it was first Muslim state representative, and I didn't even realize that was in Delaware, because you see stuff on social media and you I didn't even realize it. I was like, oh my God, that's where I remember her from. And then I did some, not creepy, not to be creepy, but some background check where I was like, oh my God, we went to the same middle school. I thought it was really inspiring.
Yeah, yes.
I thought it was very inspiring. So I want to ask you, how long ago did you start wearing your hijab?
Sure. Yeah. So I started wearing hijab when I was about 12.
Okay. We started around the same time.
Yeah, which is kind of,
almost every Muslim girl, yeah.
And it was easier for me to kind of transition to that because I went to Islamic school for elementary school, so it was part of the uniform for the girls. And then my first year in middle school, in public school, I just kind of carried it on. So I went from wearing it most of the time to a new environment with new people, and I just showed up wearing it. So it wasn't that kind of, sometimes it's awkward where you weren't wearing it this year and then you show up after summer and people are like, what's changed?
That's definitely how it was for me. Yeah. They were like, I thought you wasn't wearing it. I'm like, well, now I am.
Right.
It's always are you forced? No, it was a choice. It's supposed to be a choice. But for you, as I want to say, what does your Muslim identity mean to you? Especially being as a state representative, I feel like there could be a lot that could come with that, especially being the first Muslim in the state representative. As a Muslim, did you struggle with that?
I mean, it's a lot.
Right.
So to answer the later part of the question first, being the only one, no matter what your identity you're repping, is a lot of pressure. And so being the only Muslim, being one of a few people of color, black people, being young. So I was elected at 26 years old. Yeah. Most legislators are much older than that.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like there's a lot of pressure on you to represent, perform, not add to stereotypes and things like that. So it's a lot. And I actually had an interaction earlier this week where I kind of looked back on it and I'm like, Madinah meant what she said. Right. But should Madinah have said that being the only Muslim?
Right.
Because now it's kind of, now that added where it's this person might now have a stereotype about Muslims.
Yes.
Which isn't fair.
It's not.
So that's kind of the pressure that comes with it, because you're balancing between being yourself and being genuine and being authentic, and then also trying to be the best version of a Muslim that this person is going to interact
Right.
with, you know? So it's difficult.
Because we do carry the religion on our head, and when people look at us, they automatically think we're Muslim before they get to try to recognize us as a person.
Right.
Before you're Medina, you're a Muslim to them.
Right.
So,
And I know there are a lot of Muslim women that have stopped wearing it because
of that. Yeah, I know.
Because they don't want that pressure, or because they feel like they're not a good enough example to wear it. And that's really sad. Like that there's enough pressure on us in the society that we're making decisions about ourselves based on what other people think.
Opinions,
and how they, you know, and it can be pressure from the community where they're like, why do you have that on when you're doing X, Y, and Z?
I know,
And we shouldn't be discouraging people from wearing it.
We definitely should not be.
So to answer the other part of your question, like my identity, like being a Muslim, I grew up Muslim. My parents both converted. So I grew up in a household where both my parents chose to be Muslim, and my extended family was not.
Okay.
So we had a lot of conversations about religion from like a young age. And like I mentioned, I went to Islamic school. So like I was raised and like brought up in a community that was like very, very proud to be Muslim, very vibrant,
Mashallah.
very diverse. So it definitely has shaped me into the person that I am today. And one of the reasons why I ran for office is because as a Muslim, I feel it's important, and we're taught that it's important to Muslims to stand up for justice.
Right.
And when you see injustice, to change it with your hand.
Yes.
And if you can't change it, then to speak out against it. And if you can't speak out against it, to then hate it in your heart. And that's, we're told that's
and
the
pray
weakest,
on it. Yep.
right?
Ask Allah
of
to
faith.
change it.
Yeah. So that's like, that teaching, when I realized after working in state government that I had a skill set and I had knowledge that a lot of folks in the community were not able to get, and I saw these problems in the community, I'm like, now the responsibility is on me to actually do something to remedy these problems in the community. So that's why I ran.
Mashallah, I love that for you. Like, it's very inspiring as well. Like, I'm in criminal justice myself, and my parents weren't very okay with it because they thought it wasn't a ladylike career, right? They thought it's more like cultural, like I guess clashing, but I fought for my like major, and I definitely wanted to be a part of it. As a Muslim, I know like I have a strong assertive voice, and I wanted to use that in speaking up for injustices and working part of the criminal justice system, because you know, in America, it's no secret that the criminal justice system is broken, and you know, we need people who want to fix it in order for it to be a better system. So I definitely find that like inspiring for me personally. Like, I hope it's also inspiring to other females as well. And when it comes to the hijab, I personally know a lot of people who are discouraged from that as well. And it's sad because it's like, before we give Allah a chance to judge us, we're judging ourselves through other people's opinions, and it's sad and that we're taking a step back from our deen. I hope like everybody that's struggling with that to find ease and make it easier for them, inshallah. But like, did you have any setbacks in your career due to you being Muslim? I know like with the stereotypes, like you had to basically think of consistently like, well, especially because not just because you're Muslim, but because you're also young. I know they're expecting you, like if you mess up, like, well, she is young, she is not experienced, so they were probably expecting that from you, in my opinion. And I like, in my visit to the Legislative House when I came, like I did see a lot of older people and not as much representation. So it was nice to see a familiar face in there. Yeah,
no, that's definitely valid. I can't say that I've had any setbacks really.
Okay.
I've had interactions that I would say were not ideal. And like the interaction I had this week where it's like, that's kind of Islamophobic what you just said, and like you're playing on stereotypes, you know, but I will say overall my experience has been positive. And I think in a space like politics where your whole thing is trying to set yourself apart, right? And like you saw me on social media, right? Like that's a big part of running for office and staying in office is getting out there, sharing your message like you do with the podcast.
Right.
So having that unique like look, I think definitely helped me.
Yeah.
And there were instances where like I would see someone and they would recognize me and they'd be like, "Hey, Medina, how's it going?" And I'd be like, "Who's that?"
You're a celebrity in Delaware.
because to them, I'm the only Muslim they've ever met.
Right.
So it must be me. Like there was actually an instance where somebody texted me and was like, "You're doing a great job at this speech." And I was sitting on the couch at home.
Right.
And I'm like,
what speech?
I don't know who you're talking about. But you know, they just assumed covered Muslim woman in Delaware talking politics, it's got to be Medina.
Right.
She's doing a great job.
Mashallah, oh my God.
I think it's been a blessing for me in that way, that I've gotten to kind of stand out. People recognize me because of my scarf, and then I'm able to work from there.
I love that. Like I know like other Muslim women have had setbacks in their careers because of hijab, and I love that that hasn't been an experience for you, and I hope it continues remaining a positive experience, because I feel like that shows that the generation is kind of evolving towards Muslims, at least in Delaware, I would hope.
I think so.
You think like the Delaware as a state could, like when I was trying to outline this podcast, right, I tried to do research on how many Muslims live in Delaware, like the Delaware's Muslim population, and I couldn't even get a correct number. So I was like, I don't even know how many Muslims live in Delaware, but from my personal experience, I know a lot of Muslims, like just Turkish Muslims alone, and there are other races of Muslims. Do you think that Delaware as a state could benefit for having more Muslim representatives on the legislative?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not just saying that because of being selfish.
Right.
In that it would be nice to share, you know, with someone else. But I think not just about being Muslim, right, but having diverse voices in politics, whether it's state politics or national politics, international politics, is so key to us actually getting to the root cause of what our issues are as communities and solving them. Like, there are so many problems that, you know, the Black community has dealt with for years, but we don't have Black people that are on, say, like, in positions where they get to write budgets for some of the things that the state pays money for. So then there's a disconnect between the community seeing an issue and the people that can actually do something to solve the problem. And I've seen just in the 2.5 years or so that I've been in office, a number of occasions where, because I was at the table or because someone else from a different background was at the table, the conversation shifted in a way, and everyone benefited from it at the table, right? Like, now sometimes there's growing pains that come with that, where people are like, well, you know, I don't think you're right in X, Y, Z, but we work through it. And then everyone at the table is now more educated on what all Delawareans are dealing with, not just certain subsects that, you know, we all come from. And we all have our own biases and experiences. So the more diverse that table gets, the more representative it is of Delaware.
And the more change we get, because without having like diverse representation, I don't think other people could understand a certain community's perspective. So me personally, I believe we need a lot more Muslim representation alone, just like minority representation as well. So I personally think there needs to be more Muslims in the state and working for governments just regardless, but you know, I feel like there's also a stereotype between Muslims, like my parents alone, like I'm not trying to say like they're bad parents, they're great parents, but like they think that working in for like America's government, where they're just like, well, you're Turkish. I'm like, yes, but I'm also American, like we live here, like yes, I have a dual citizenship, but like I live in both countries, I've lived in both countries, and I'm a speaker for both. Like I'm an advocate and a voice for both, and I got to represent what I can while I'm here for my people, because there's a large community of Turkish people alone, like let alone just Turkish people, but Muslim people in general. So it's like we need more people in our system to be able to represent us, in my opinion.
I agree with you, and I think you're hitting on a theme that I've heard a lot since I got elected, right? So I'm the first, I'm hoping not to be the only one for very much longer, inshallah. But one of the hurdles that we have as a community is a lot of, I'll say like second gen or like immigrant part of our community, right? There is this expectation that you're going to be a doctor, an engineer, maybe a lawyer. Yeah. Getting a little crazy with lawyer, right? But maybe a lawyer. Those are like kind of, that's what's expected. And if you don't do those things, you're not successful. Yeah. I'm not proud of your, you know, whatever. Whereas like the African American Muslim community, that's not the case. Right. We have a lot of variety in what we're doing. And I think it could be just because we've been in the country for so long, we've seen civil rights and things, you know, be successful or not, that we recognize that we need to be at the table. And I think we're at that moment now where the immigrant Muslim community, like older generations, are recognizing, oh no, we need to be at the table. Yes. So somebody's kid's gonna have to go and do politics or do, you know, be a lawyer or, and we're seeing, I think once you see like a couple examples, right, where there's an immigration lawyer in the community that's able to help your family through an immigration case, then suddenly people are like, oh yeah, no. Yeah. We gotta have more, we need to have more Muslims in that. Or, you know, whatever other field it is. Like one of the other things that I've been seeing a lot of, and you're doing this, is media, right? Like there was so much criticism of how the media shows Muslims and people of color.
All the time.
But then nobody wants their kids to go into broadcasting.
That's what I'm saying. Right? Like, who's gonna represent us if you're letting the people who aren't us represent us in a bad way? You know what I mean? Right, right. No, I definitely agree.
I think we're seeing a shift.
Yeah, inshallah. Like I think like there is hope for the future generation. And like you said, like having examples of successful stories, like growing up, I didn't really have somebody that I looked up to in like America's, like, I don't know how to word it, but like, you know how like as a kid, there will be this certain, oh, I want to be like that doctor. I want to grow up to be this person. Like even in like Disney stories where we didn't really have a representation. So it's like, I think it's important to have these type of representations for the future generations, because like you could teach your kids like, this is what she did, and you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a lawyer. There's other options for you. Versus like when I told my parents I wanted to be in criminal justice, they like tried to present different options for me. They were like, well, you weren't into graphic design. I thought you wanted to do interior designing at one point. I'm like, yeah, like I was interested, but it's not what my heart set out to be. And they were just afraid of me being in a male-dominated area. And I understand that. Like I emphasize with my parents, like I understand their concerns. I understand immigrant parents' concerns as well, because like having their kid be the first in something, it can also be scary. And I'm the first one to attend college. I'm the oldest in my family. Like I'm the first one who had to do the ropes, show the ropes for my siblings and set the tone. So it's like whatever I did wrong, my siblings, it was going to be a bad thing for my siblings. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Like I dropped out of college and now I'm back and I'm still trying to find my way. And I was just like, this was a lot of pressure going in, and now I know what I want to do, and I'm not going to let anybody get in the way of it. So I'm hoping it, you know, sets the tone for my siblings. But going back to being a legislator, is this something that you knew you wanted to do for a long time, or is it something that you came to the conclusion of? Because, you know, I struggled with figuring out what I wanted to do as a career in school. So how did you come to that decision in the end?
Great question. So no, I didn't know I wanted to do it. And I don't necessarily want to do it forever, right?
Okay.
Like I kind of ran for office knowing that, and the more I'm doing it, the more I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to do this for another 10 years probably.
Right.
And so what I'll say is I also took a journey, right? When I was at Gauger in the middle school we went to together, or the same one we went to, I had a career exploration class. And so I like did one of those tests on the computer, and it was like, this is what you should do. And before that, I wanted to be a chef. Like I wanted to have a restaurant, and I had made a menu and all that. Right? So I wanted to go to culinary school. I did that test in that class, and it told me to be an interpreter or a translator. I love studying languages. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I went through high school, and I was accepted into college with that in mind. That's what I wanted to do. And then like first year of college, I was like, probably not going to achieve like native level fluency in any of these languages, because I'm starting them all later in life. And so someone gave me some advice and said, hey, how about you do international relations? Because I wanted to be an interpreter for like the United Nations or something. Like I wanted to be in the political world, but languages and just translating. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he was like, why do you want to be like an interpreter? Why don't you be the person, like the diplomat that has somebody interpret for them? And honestly, before that, I hadn't thought about it. And years later, talking to my dad, he was like, yeah, you know, I just did that because I watched a movie called The Interpreter, and like, it was just terrible. I didn't want you to have that life. So like, he wasn't trying to necessarily like encourage me to be a diplomat. He was just like, I don't want that life for my daughter. But it was that kind of like spark that made me think, you know, maybe I do have what it takes to be a politician or something. Then fast forward, I got an internship working down here in Dover in the legislature. I didn't know anything about state politics when I got there. I like did a quick study to do the interview and got the job. It was so like inspiring. It was exciting. Like every day was something new. And I got to see how much of an impact state politics has on day-to-day life in Delaware. And that was inspiring. And so I actually just started working there like full time. That was my first job out of college. And I really liked it. And then I left that job, and there was talk that the person that was representing me at the time was going to retire. And people were like, why don't you think about it? Like, you worked there, you know everybody there, you know how the process works, you grew up in the area, like, why don't you run? So that was really, like, I hadn't really thought about running. Like I said, my dad told me, you know, why don't you try that instead of
I feel like Allah had this plan set in motion for you, and He's literally planted His seeds little by little. Like that movie was just like an excuse for your father. Like it was just like Allah put it in front of him. Like, all right, go plant the seeds in Medina's brain, and it was meant to be. You know, that's a beautiful story though, mashallah. Because like I feel like that's why a lot of people are scared of college as well. Because everybody goes in with a different intention, and then as they're figuring out their journey throughout college. They have different ideas and change their mind, and now they don't know what to do, and they feel like they're running so behind. And that's how I felt. Like I didn't want to change my major, and I just didn't want to go through the whole process again. And I feel like a lot of people could relate to that, and that's inspiring. Like you start off with wanting to be a translator, a chef,
Switch majors. I was like, should I go to law school? They were like, your GPA's not good enough. I was like, okay.
And you still got to figure it out at such a young age.
I took 5
mashallah.
years to graduate with my bachelor's degree. That's something else. Like I think a lot of times, at least I can speak for myself, right? And that when I realized I was going to do another year, I was like, oh no, like everybody else is like doing 3 years. It feels like, right? It feels like everybody else has it figured out, but they don't. And like, you know, people graduate in 3 years with a major that they don't end up working. Like you're on your own time.
Right.
Just
everybody has their own journey. Yeah, we definitely discussed this before with like a different episode where everybody's always in this rush to figure out life. I'm just like, nope, everybody has their own journey. You can never be successful if you're constantly comparing. Comparison's a thief of joy.
Right. Yes.
Yes, it definitely is. But mashallah, that's so inspiring to me. I want to talk about your re-election because I know this is your second term, right?
Yes, yeah.
How was the process of re-election for you? Like, what was the campaign process like? Did you face challenges like compared to your first election? Was it easier because you had more experience?
That's a lot. I don't know. So the first time I ran against an incumbent who had been in office for like 22 years, I think.
Oh wow.
So that was tough.
Right.
And then like halfway through, well, not even halfway through, a few months in, maybe 5 months in, COVID hits. Right, so our plan had been knock on every door like 3 times, talk to everybody in person, and then we couldn't do that because of COVID. So we had to totally like switch gears. We got onto social media. We were doing phone calls and like stuff like that, but it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And then, like maybe halfway into the election cycle, another person jumped in the race, which made it really tough because when you're the challenger and you're going against an incumbent, the main thing you want to do normally is like make a difference. Like I'm the change candidate. This is like things have been bad. I'm gonna make things better, right? But if there's 2 people saying that, now people have to decide, oh, okay, which change candidate do I want to go with? And he was a West African guy, so I'm like, yo, he's taking like all the West Africans now. Like so, it was tough. It was very, very tight. And in the end, we won by 43 votes. So it was really close, like very, very close. Re-election, now I'm the incumbent. I've only been in for 2 years.
Right.
So part of what I have to communicate to the community is these are things that I've been successful on. These are the things that I want to continue to work on. So you're trying to message that you've been successful, but you only had 2 years. Part of it's COVID, right? So like a lot of stuff hasn't been the way that you would expect.
Right.
And like we're dealing with just different problems than normal. And then now I had a challenger, both in the primary and in the general election, that's the change candidate.
Right.
So it was kind of like, it took some adjusting because I was used to being the person that's like, the system is broken, we gotta fix it. And now I'm part of the system. So I have to differentiate what's different between me and the problems and what I'm doing to fix the problems.
Right.
So.
But I think like in the 2 years, like talking about how you were successful at the things that you have done, it shows where it's like, if you give me some more time, I could even be more successful. You just got to give me the time to do it because nothing happens overnight. Everything is a work in progress. Yeah. I know like according to 2017 statistics, the percentage of women legislators in America is about 25%. And as an African-American young Muslim woman in a male-dominated work field, like how did you break those barriers? You know, like I feel like that is a lot of barriers to break.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I always say, and I was honestly surprised by it when I came confronted it. When I was knocking on doors, a lot of times people that were older and that were white were the ones that were so excited to see me.
Really? Mashallah, I love that.
And you gotta, remember my first year running was 2020 election. So that was Trump versus Biden. So there was this like emotional response from people, right? Where they're like, we need younger people, we need people of color, we need to send a message that we don't support Trump, we don't support any of that. So I think a lot of people saw me as kind of like the antithesis, right? Of the Trump America. It's like, no, a young person who's Muslim, who's black, who grew up here, who's a woman. Right. That's what we need.
Wow.
And like every time I got that response, I was kind of like, oh, like, but it was really inspiring, and like it kind of kept me going, because people of color, like they would kind of just give me the silent nod and be like, No, we're good. We got you. You don't have to
Aww.
keep the paper. I got you, girl. I'm gonna vote for you. But when it was older white people that were like, thank you.
Yeah.
And they're like, when are you gonna run for president?
Oh my
and
God.
I'm like, sir, I'm only 27. Like, I can't.
Oh my God.
But I like to share that because I think sometimes with like media and stuff, it can feel like, you know? But at least in my neighborhood, like where I grew up in my part of Delaware, that's not the case.
Yeah,
like,
I think like social media would have expected you to have more challenges because of all those barriers. But I love that those barriers actually worked out in your favor. You know what I mean? Like that's also another stereotype. A lot of people assume just because we're a person of color, a female in a hijabi, we're gonna face all these challenges. Yes, we will, but sometimes like Allah has a plan, right? Like those can be our strengths, and we would have never even know it. Like we didn't even see it coming. Yeah. I love that it was.
I mean, you're so right, and part of it too is like what you mentioned, like the statistics, right? Like 25%. I don't know what the percentage is for like nationwide,
right?
But like we're about half the population women, right? In Delaware, I think we're like 35% Black people or something like that, right? So for us to have a government that actually looks like us and that can relate to us, it's got to shift. It needs to be more women. It needs to, and we're seeing that happen. And I think people are realizing that. But one of the cool things I'll say about being someone who's Black, who's Muslim, who's a woman, who's young, I can relate to all of those communities personally.
Yes.
Because I go through similar struggles to them. So, you know, white women would see me and they're like, she gets it. She's not gonna, you know, vote to ban abortion because she recognizes how important reproductive rights are and things like that, right? And the Muslims are like, oh, she's not gonna be like, you know, anti-immigrant rhetoric. Like she's gonna make sure that all of our kids feel safe in the schools and that we can communicate with the teachers and stuff because they're gonna have stuff translated. Like she understands why that's important. Every community recognizes that in me, and so in a way, it's kind of like a triple threat, quadruple threat,
right?
Because I am part of all of those communities and a proud member of them, and everybody can recognize that, so then everybody feels represented. So it's like, maybe we need like, I don't know, like a gay Asian, you know, Zoomer or something next, right? But like the more like diverse someone's identities are, the more people and communities they can bring to the table.
No, I definitely agree, and I think that's important. I genuinely love the fact that all the quality traits that you have that people would assume to get in your way has actually helped you. You know, I genuinely find that inspiring because I personally thought like, oh my God, I wonder what she had to go through. Did she struggle with, you know, being a hijabi, working in a male-dominated and like PWI, like majority white.
And there are struggles for sure.
I'm pretty sure there are, but I feel like you have like the type of person from what what's the word I'm looking for? Okay, I lost my train of thought. But from what I have basically observed, I think you have the strength and willpower to overcome those obstacles that will get in the way. And it's important because I think that puts the hope and faith into the younger generation. Like me, I know I'm not that much younger, but it's inspired me a lot in many ways.
And you can do it too, that's the thing. Like,
Inshallah.
Sometimes we just need one person to show us that you can do it as well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the same path, it doesn't have to be the same industry, but you can do it.
Yeah, everybody can, as long as you put your mind to it. And I genuinely love that because I know you're not that much older than me, and to see somebody that also had like a similar story where it's taken me a long time to get my bachelor's too, and I just was like constantly in this battle on myself where I felt like I was just so caught far behind from my peers and I wasn't doing it right, and I just didn't have it figured out. I got a sister who's in high school now. My brother went to college, like it's his first year in college, and I was like, well, I gotta figure it out because I gotta help them figure it out about how can I do that if I don't gotta figure it out, you know?
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I know, but I'm working on it. Like I'm breaking those barriers myself, hoping it would better me and them for the future, inshallah. But with it being Women's History Month, has there been any female, whether it be in history or in your personal life, that has inspired you or inspires you?
Oh yeah, I mean a lot.
Okay.
I'll say, like, on the topic of politics, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. When I was running in 2019, it was like right after she had come through, and like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and it was like that wave of younger progressive women at the national level. And I don't know if you have talked about like imposter syndrome and stuff on your show, but basically that feeling like I don't know, I'm not supposed to be here because what do I know? What do I have to bring to the table? And you start feeling like you're an imposter, like you're tricking people, like you got here somehow by tricking people, right? So when I would start to feel that way when I was running for office, and part of it wasn't just me, part of it was people telling me, you don't know what you got yourself into. You're not gonna win. You can't raise enough money to win. Like, I don't know what you think you're doing and things like that. It starts to build.
Right.
And you start to believe it. And so I remember on a few occasions thinking about AOC and realizing, look, she went from bartending to being a congresswoman overnight, basically, in the largest city in the country. And she's doing an amazing job. I'm just running for local. Right. Right? Where I grew up, I already worked down there. So it was kind of like, she was kind of an inspiration to me because I'm like, if she can do that, like
imagine
reach
what
for
I
the
can
stars, like I can do this. I can help my community at this level in an arena I've already kind of operated in. Like you can do it. And I also just love how accessible she's been through the years. She's very on Instagram and like I think she was on Twitch at one point. Like she does a lot of different platforms and shows kind of the behind the scenes, what it's like to run, how she makes decisions. She brings the community with her. And like sometimes she'll just like be doing her makeup and like explain like, look, I have like 5 minutes, so I'm gonna show you guys how I do my makeup and put my sunscreen on, but also like talk about how my day is gonna go and what bills are on the agenda. So she's just very creative in like engaging the community, and I've tried to model myself after that.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely gonna have to look her up after this because I think that's also inspiring, like being able to be vulnerable, because I know social media can be scary and a lot of people have their own opinions feeding you constant like negative affirmations, and it's just like you start to believe those, and that's why encouragement is really important, because having a good support system will always be important because it'll help you believe in yourself when you don't have the strength to do that. But with her being so transparent on social media, I think that's something that a lot of people are people representing or people in media just general, it's hard to do because it's a lot of people, you're giving this opportunity to people to criticize you. You're letting them have that platform. So it's like being transparent can be a struggle, but I think it's important because it shows the real you, and it allows you to have a genuine connection with people you never even met before. And now you have all these people looking up to you that you don't even know their names. I think that's important, and I love that. Like hopefully, because that's how like, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, but when I've heard of Malala's story, like the fact that the Taliban banned the right for education for women, and she spoke out against that, got shot and survived it, and now is a internationally acclaimed human rights and education activist. That was very inspiring for me because it was like, we have education right at our doorstep, and we take it for granted. Some people don't even utilize college, or I know college is not everything, like there's other routes, but it's like we have an education system where we don't have to fight for it. And she had to go through that, and it's like, I didn't want to go to college at first, so it's like, what is my excuse to not getting this education that I have at my doorstep and I have an access to, where there's people like her who don't even have the access to that. So I think it's important to constantly share in the media and show other people's stories, to reach out to people who don't have the strength to stand up for themselves. What would be your advice to other women who are also struggling to break similar barriers or just struggling with everything that we've discussed?
I'll kind of reword what I said earlier, I guess, because it kind of goes in line with it. So when I was talking about imposter syndrome, right? Like you can expect that. That's going to happen, right? When you're breaking barriers. I think that happens to a lot of us. Right. So just kind of prepare for that. And what I always like to tell people, whether they're young women, just young people in general, right? Like, you're going to have naysayers, so prepare for that, but don't let it dissuade you. Right. And this is true. I'm telling you a true story. One of the people that was telling me, you don't know what you're doing, I don't know why you're running, you're not gonna have enough money, all that stuff I mentioned earlier, was the first one when I won, who was like, I knew you could do it, da 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 da. What? Right? As soon as you make it, everybody's on board, right? So just get there. Don't let people dissuade you, because maybe they're dissuading you because they don't think they could do it because of jealousy. Sometimes it's because they honestly care about you and they don't want you to be hurt and let down. Whatever the reason is, don't let it stop you. Just push forward.
Yes. I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people struggle with because a lot of people look up to what other people's opinions are and try to get like, oh well, what do you think? Do you think I should do it? You think I could do it? Like, if you believe that you can do it, that's another thing. Like, I used to look for a lot of validation from other people, and specifically just my parents alone and like my peers and friends. But once I stopped seeking validation, like, yes, it's a plus, but once I stopped seeking for that validation, it helped me grow confidently in myself. And I would have never, like, yes, I had people believe in me to start this podcast, but it was never going to happen up until I finally was like, I'm ready to do this, and I'm going to do it regardless of other people's opinions. So I think that was great advice. I appreciate that. I also appreciate that I would hope that everybody else would appreciate it as well.
Thank you.
But with all that being said, it does have to come to an end. I really enjoyed talking to Madinah this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode. As you know, we are on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So make sure you check us out. Leave comments, suggestions, reviews, interact with us. Let me know what you want to hear next, and stick around for the next episode.